The Prince's Bride by S. Morgenstern, Chapter 1. Buttercup was raised on a small farm in the country of Florin. Her favorite pastimes were riding her horse and tormenting the farm boy that worked there. His name was Wesley, but she never called him that. Isn't that a wonderful beginning?
Yeah, it's really good.
Nothing gave Buttercup as much pleasure as ordering Wesley around.
Farm boy, polish my horse's saddle. I want to see my face shining in it by morning.
As you wish.
As you wish was all he ever said to her.
Farm boy, fill these with water. Please.
As you wish.
That day, she was amazed to discover that when he was saying, as you wish, what he meant was, I love you. And even more amazing was the day she realized she truly loved him back.
Farm boy. Fetch me that pitcher.
As you wish.
The end. Now, I think you ought to go to sleep. Okay. 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 All right. Shalom.
Grandpa? Maybe you could come over and read it again to me tomorrow.
As you wish.
Back when I was a kid, weekends were for playing or watching TV. Early Saturday mornings were a great time to watch. Remember then, TV was black and white with limited channels. I could watch channels 3, 6, 10, or 12. Later, we got a TV with UHF channels 17, 29, and 48. Wow! That was the big time. What did I watch? It basically came down to 3 choices. Cartoons was one choice. I could always watch Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, The Roadrunner, and other great cartoons. And then there was always a good old western, cowboys, Indians, outlaws. I could always dream about life as a cowboy as I watched these movies. Then there was Tarzan, King of the Jungle, a superhero without special powers. However, you never forgot his collar swinging through the trees. My first experience of Africa. Africa. Lush landscapes, jungles, rivers with crocodiles, exotic animals, and the idea that it wasn't really civilized. Where were all the modern conveniences? In school, the only thing we learned about Africa related to the slave trade in early America. There was never a mention of prosperous empires and advanced civilizations. Once in a while we'd watch a movie in class. We had nothing like YouTube or Discovery Education back then. My only visual aid of Africa really came from those old Tarzan movies.
It wasn't until I went to college that I learned about civilizations of Africa. So now it's your turn. What do you think you know about Africa?
Answer the 3 questions on the Moodle. What do you know about the geography? How is the geography of shown in popular culture? What do you think it would be like to live in Africa?
Hey, have you ever built a pyramid before?
No, what do I have to do?
Well, first you have to go to the website.
Where is the website?
Look for the link on the Moodle.
Okay, I found it. Now what?
Click on the link. It will take you to where you will begin. Make sure you read carefully as you go along.
Anything else I need to know?
Yes. There's a number of questions you have to answer while you build your pyramid.
Should I wait until the end to answer them?
No, make sure you read as you go along and answer the questions on your paper.
What happens when I'm finished?
Go on the Moodle and click on the link to the assignment. Remember to use the questions to help tell your story. Be sure to look at the rubric for how you will be graded.
Does spelling count?
Of course. Good luck.
Thanks, I'll see you when I'm done.
Creating a Pixton comic is as easy as clicking and dragging. However, there are a few basic concepts you should understand before you begin. Each comic you make is made up of a series of panels or scenes which are arranged in rows. Everything you do to create a comic, you do by clicking buttons or by clicking and dragging directly on the objects in the panel. What's great about Pixton is that you only see the buttons that relate to what you're doing. So if I select a character, I see a different set of buttons than when I select a speech bubble or a prop, and I see another set of buttons when nothing in the panel is selected. This is one of the big ideas behind Pixton. You only see the buttons that relate to what you're doing. Another key concept to understand is what we call modes. Let's take a character as an example. If I click once on a character to select it, I now see 5 different colored buttons along the left side of the panel. Each of these buttons switches me to a different character mode. The mode that I select determines what happens when I click and drag on the character. For example, if I select a character and then enter the green or edit expression mode, when I click and drag on the character, I can now change the position of each body part. This is the second big idea behind Pixton. The mode that you select determines what you can do to a character, speech bubble, or prop when you click and drag it.
It was 1298 in Genoa, Italy, and Marco Polo and I were working tirelessly at the spice shop. Marco told me all the stories his dad used to tell him about his many adventures. Of course I never believed him, because his stories sounded too good to be true. But one regular day at the spice shop, Marco left what he was doing and came over to me. "Carlo, would you like to go to China with me?" I didn't answer him. It was a loud silence. Then he grabbed my hand, ran all the way to his house, sat me at the table, and rolled out a map. He pointed to one place only, China. Then he showed me a gold block that his father gave to him. He said this was from the Khan in China for safe travels. Right at that moment, I knew China was my destiny. I ran home and grabbed all the things I needed for this long journey. When I was finished, I went back to the home of Marco, his father, and his uncle. Then we all said our goodbyes to our loved ones and headed on the Silk Road. As we walked further, we stopped in Jerusalem to get oil. There we were joined by 2 priests. Next, we went through spectacular snowy mountains. They were more majestic than anything I've ever seen. But the priest complained about the length of the journey, every single step. Finally, it was too much for the 2 of them, so they pushed Marco and I to the ground, saying we will die on this journey, and turned around and left. That was the last we ever saw of the priest. The night dawned on us quickly, and we had to set up camp somewhere. After we got settled, I heard a horrible groaning noise. I ran as fast as I could to Marco. I found him on the ground dying. I didn't know what to do. I picked him up with all the strength I had left me and dragged him over to Marco's dad.
"He's dying, and we must help him," I demanded. His father checked to see that Marco was still breathing as the sun began to rise. We started our journey to a nearby village to save Marco from death. We walked much faster than normal. We couldn't let Marco die out here. I was washed with relief when we finally got to the village.
We rushed to find the people, and everyone came to help. Then the village leader came through the crowd. He opened up his arms and picked up Marco and brought him to his house. The village leader gave Marco medicine, water, and food. He nursed Marco back to health very quickly, and once he recovered, we could go back on our journey. After many long, hard miles on this weary journey, we were coming up to another little village that we thought was abandoned. We came up to the gate, and boom! We heard several large things crash into the ground. People on horseback came riding out through the gates, bombs exploding all around us. Through all of this madness, Marco and I had stood watching. What made these bombs blow? Then, the people came running around us. We were surrounded. Marco's dad yelled something in Chinese and held out the gold block the Khan had given him. The madness stopped. After a short time, they decided to lead us to where we wanted to go. All of a sudden, we realized something amazing. I couldn't believe my eyes. We were finally in China. We walked to this wonderful building in the center of the village. I inferred this was the Khan's house. We got instructions to come in on our knees and not look at the Khan. As we came in, the Khan had a harsh look on his face. "Where are my priests? Why did you only bring oil?" the Khan questions. No one answered him. "Answer me!" he yelled impatiently. Marco glared up at him. "The priests were too weak to finish this journey. They left in the mountains of Jerusalem," Marco responded. With a wave of his hand, the Khan signaled the guards to take us out of the room. The guards then led Marco, his dad, his uncle, and I out of the palace for us to leave.
Marco's dad and uncle already saddled up their horses to start back home. Marco then backed away from his horse. "I'm not leaving. Our adventure has only begun, and I'm not going back." Marco refused. At that moment, I knew Marco was right. There was so much more to see and do. I backed up next to him. "I'm not leaving either," I agreed.
After saying goodbye to his father and uncle, Marco and I were given a home and a servant to help us with our new life in China. Right away, we began to discover new things about this mysterious land. One new thing we learned was that the Chinese use paper for money. While we were in the city, we learned quite quickly that women had an equal say in things. This was very different from life in Italy.
Later that day, Marco, our servant Pedro, and I were looking around the marketplace. When out of nowhere, Marco gets trampled over by a horse. Pedro rushes him right to the village doctor, who uses traditional Chinese medicine called acupuncture to treat his wounds.
As time went on, there was tension in the village. The Khan was unaware that people were actually killing each other. Marco and I started getting very mad about all this killing. So we went up to the Khan to tell him the truth about his army. "Kublai Khan, your army is using you to get away with horrid things," Marco explains. "You are doing nothing to help your people," I added. The Khan was furious. He yelled many things in which we couldn't understand. But then we realized we were being thrown in jail.
After many long weeks in jail, the Khan figured out that we were telling the truth and let us out. The Khan then realized we were the most trustworthy people ever, so he made us men of court. As a thank you gift, the Khan gave Marco a bride. Marco loved this woman with all of his heart, even though he knew she never really loved him.
Marco met his wife's sister, Kenzai. Marco will take care of her if anything happens to his wife. The Khan then came over to Marco and I and said he wanted the heads of the rebels that spoke out against him. Marco and I will now have to start another journey to a village in another part of China.
While Marco and I are at the village, the Khan comes with his army ready to punish those that spoke out against him. When the battle was finished, Marco and I then had to return back to the village with the Khan. Once we were there, we were told many far-fetched stories of legends in China. These legends inspired us for our next journey to discover the truth. We had many more adventures in China, but one topped them all, and that was when Marco and I were reunited with Kenzai. We spent many days secretly meeting her. Marco began to love her, and this time it seemed like she loved him too. One day, the Khan came up to us and said that his brother's wife died and he wanted a new bride, and he chose Kenzai. The Khan's brother needed our help to bring her to him. Finally, Marco and I agreed to take Kenzai to Persia, but all Marco wanted to do was run off with her, so that's what we were going to do. When we got to Persia, we were amazed at how beautiful it was. As we walked into the palace, one of the Khan's helpers told us that the Khan here was dead. Marco was overjoyed. Now he could run away with Kenzai. But no, as we started to run out with Kenzai, someone started to attack us. It was a long battle, but Marco and I killed him. We started out again, but this time we were stopped by an army. The man that was leading said that they were going to take Kenzai to another man in Persia. Like lightning, they grabbed Kenzai and were gone. Marco and I stood there. We both knew it was time to go back to Italy.
As we returned to Italy, I couldn't help but be amazed by all the things we've seen and done. Although I had my doubts at first, China proved to be the most spectacular place in this world. But our adventures didn't end with China. We traveled all over the world, even the center. But these adventures will never top our adventures in China.